It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I'm Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412 over on X, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're everywhere. Also, go check out our YouTube. Our YouTube's been popping off with the Steelers show, but we also want to try to grow that up with the Pirates and the Penguin shows as well. So go give us some love on there. Subscribe to the channel. Leave us a like on the video and let us know in the comments if you like what you're seeing or if you have any questions about any of the three Pittsburgh sport teams or even just anything in general. Maybe we'll answer it on one of our shows. Go check out the YouTube. Give us some love on there. This is a Steelers show, and minicamp is officially over. So you know what that means. We are the dog days of summer until we get the training camp, and then it's officially football season. So we just got to grind out the next month, little over a month, and we're going to be there. It's going to be there before we know it.
Absolutely. Time flies once we get to this point. 6 weeks from now, we'll be training camp, and then, it's going to be off and running until the season starts. Really get excited when the pads come on at training camp. So excited for that. News to talk about on this episode, though, the big news, Mike Tomlin, 3-year extension. Want to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, the comments, thoughts on this. It's been, obviously, I've talked about it for several days on the afternoon drive with Alan Saunders about this, so I have a feeling of how the comments are feeling about a 3-year extension for Mike Tomlin. But I want to get your perspective because I remember going back to last year, right? Like, man, what a roller coaster season it was. And there was a point in the year when they lost back-to-back games. Sunday game to Arizona, short week, lose to the Patriots. 2 2-win teams beating the Steelers at home in a row. And I think that at that time, we both just felt so deflated. Again, you can kind of get wrapped up in the emotions of a season and be overly emotional about it, maybe not thinking rationally. But we were both kind of the mindset, like not necessarily let's fire Mike Tomlin right now or anything like that. But I specifically remember us basically both saying for the first time, we feel like we'd be okay if they went a different direction and found a fresh voice. Now, following this extension, with as much turnaround as they've had around Tomlin, besides Tomlin, I 100% believe that he should still be the guy at the helm because of that. When you don't have an answer at quarterback, when you have as many moving pieces, offensive coordinator, the offensive line, like when the entire organization, even Omar Khan, just 2 years in the position, so many things have kind of changed around him. I'm not sure if right now is the right time to do that. It's nice to have that stability at the very least. So for right now, I'm good with this. I guess where you kind of maybe, and this is again like nitpicking because who even knows if he coaches this thing out. This is the organization saying, we want you for 3 more years. He could technically walk away after this year and be done and retire or go into media, do whatever. But I would have liked this, I think, to have been a 2-year deal as opposed to a 3-year extension. But that's like, again, you're pulling teeth at that point. Like you're splitting hairs. That's the term that I wanted there at that point. But I want to get your thoughts on this because last year, we were kind of at a point where, again, didn't necessarily want him fired, but would have been cool if the organization and him decided to go different directions.
Yeah, you mentioned those 2 games, which I feel like I had spaced from my memory permanently. But you somehow reminded me of them and made me think about them. And that was probably, I don't know, in my recent memory, that might have been the most apathetic, like just the most, the lack of interest, the most I've ever had with the Steelers was just that stretch right there because the team was not having anything going for them. The offense was not figuring it out. The quarterback problems we were having, that was just after the whole Matt Canada saga. So that whole thing was over, but then the team didn't improve from there. And they had that happen. And like I said, that was probably the least interested I was in wanting to watch Steelers football, maybe ever. And that includes like 2019, where Ben was knocked out for the entire season, and it was going between Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges. Like it was so
that
tough.
Was one of my, oddly enough, I don't want to cut you off.
That was probably the most entertaining times.
I had more
wild
fun
card every single time you'd watch a game.
Right. They were playing with house money. I feel like that was it. Like we just no expectation.
And we traded for Minka that year too.
Yeah, right.
And
the
first year
he
of
just
Minka
completely changed the defense. Like more game-making plays than you'll see from the free safety position. Alan mentioned that too. Like playing free safety in a lot of different schemes is the least important position. It's just about like, don't let somebody go over the top and score a touchdown for a lot of teams. The way that the Steelers have used Minka, or at least have tried to use him again, hopefully they can get back to that in 2024, playing Minka ball. They've even coined a term for it. Well, they've kind of gotten away from that because of injuries to other places and him having to fill in, and also his own injuries. But yeah, like 2019 to me, I had more fun that season than most seasons that have happened since then. Even like 2020, when they started out 11-0, like I didn't enjoy watching that team as much as 2019. Most
fraudulent 11-0 team, which I know we tried to defend at the time. During that season, we were just like, no, that's just everybody else saying it. If you go back and look at the statistics, look at the games, and actually watch some of those, like that team throughout that year, most fraudulent 11-0 team, they lucked their way into 11-0, I feel like, and had a good defense. But back to what I was saying. Last year, that stretch where we were saying those things about Tomlin, least interested I've ever been in Steelers football, I did feel like that. I was very okay with the idea if Tomlin were to be fired this offseason, I'm fine with that. And that's the first time that I could have ever said that since Mike Tomlin has been head coach. But like you mentioned, circumstances change. You have a change at quarterback. You have a change at offensive coordinator. And I feel like you need to have someone sure at the helm of that ship. And I don't think that there is a better guy that the Steelers could have than Mike Tomlin, because we don't know what it's like going to be going into the season. And part of the reason we discussed a little bit last year about how much say he would have had in the decision-making for this, but like part of the blame that we were saying for or criticism that we were giving for the Steelers, and whether it was management, Tomlin, or a combination of both, was their succession plan to Matt Canada if it were to happen where he gets fired during the season. We had an issue with that, and we never really will ever get a clear answer how much say Tomlin versus Rooney had in that sort of decision making, or even like Khan himself. But Khan being a first year last year, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and keep him out of it. I'm looking at the other two mainly. So with the give and take, you never know how much is actually going to be said. But I feel like that was also part of the reason where I'm like ready to move on from Tomlin, or at least I was, because I feel like if he was going to get the team into the situation that he was in, you couldn't have thought up a better way to at least protect that position moving forward, or at least to have a better succession plan for that position of offensive coordinator moving forward, to put your team still in the best position to win some football games if you do move on from Matt Canada. So that was also a criticism that I had of him last year. But moving forward, I think it makes sense to extend him. Obviously, the team wants him. And before I forget about it, you mentioned that you'd want a 2-year deal. I don't really think him, and I agree. I think that like 2-year deal would have been fine, but I don't think, no matter what any fan says, unless there is just an absolute cutoff from Mike Tomlin for the Steelers, like there's something happens that they just absolutely part ways, the Steelers are just basically going to be giving him extensions until Tomlin doesn't want to coach anymore. And I feel like that's just the way it's going to be happening moving forward. And so the 3-year extension doesn't bother me at all. And as far as the length goes, and then as far as the extension goes, I think it makes sense. You knew one was going to happen. I don't think that he was going to be on the looming 1-year contract last year, the contract, and not have one coming up. They were going to extend him. I feel like despite what some people wanted to say, like if he would want to like move on from the Steelers or move to like a place like Washington or something, I still like he still wants to be in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh very clearly wants him here. And like you had mentioned and what I just touched on, like with the quarterback battle that's going to be happening, the change of offense and how much new there is to the Steelers in 2024, having a surety of a head coach is something that I feel like is probably intangible in terms of like the actual substance of it, but for what he's going to bring leadership wise to the team. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some decisions that Tomlin makes in season that are still going to drive some fans nuts, us included. But as far as leading your team and being the leader of that organization and of those men, I don't think that the Steelers had a better option in 2024 or forward than Mike Tomlin.
I will say, to kind of play devil's advocate here and be on the other side of it, because I do get the notion or the idea that some fans have about this, like because of everything that we just brought up,
Yeah.
I guess you could also make the case, why not just start fresh now? If you're starting fresh at all these other spots, why not also start fresh at the head coaching spot? And you're probably going to be very bad for a season, but also that's your best chance of actually landing a impact game-changing player at the most important position at quarterback. Like, that's the thing with Tomlin. People are obviously I don't want to get into this whole conversation about the non-losing seasons and then no playoff success in 6 seasons, all that stuff. But just saying, he has a very safe floor for what his teams are. You know that they are going to be in the mix. You know that they're going to be competitive enough where they're not picking high in the draft. So that's another caveat there that I'll just throw in there. Like, I do understand the other side of that, where fans would have rather just stripped this thing down to the studs and started over fresh at the position.
And to give a rebuttal to that, devil's advocate, I think that the mentality of the organization, from Rooney to Kahn to Tomlin, that is why that will never happen. Is because in their minds, it is still trying to make it to the playoffs. It's still trying to win a Super Bowl. And we've talked about this. Like, don't get me wrong. I have said before, a couple years ago when they were, 1-4 at one point, I said, like, just tank. Just finally rip the Band-Aid
2019
off,
season we just
team.
mentioned, best opportunity for it to happen. They went 8-8. Like,
absolutely. Absolutely. I just don't think that the Steelers are mentally there to open themselves up to that idea of tanking and starting fresh. And sure, like, maybe you're going to be bad for a few seasons, but I don't think that they're going to be there anytime soon. And so while I agree that there is definitely a faction of Steeler fans that think that way, and I think they do have a point to some extent, because I do think that there is some value in being bad at certain points, because mediocrity is something that doesn't really improve your team, at least in a quick manner. Like, you're not going to improve your team overnight being mediocre. You could improve your team overnight being bad. It only takes a draft or two for a team to improve. But
what's interesting, and we're talking about like aliens here at the quarterback position, but Kansas City, not bad when they traded up and got Mahomes. Buffalo, kind of that was traded up to get Josh Allen. Edmonds was their actual pick with their own pick. So they weren't like a terrible team at the time either. But then you have, maybe the third best, or at least that conversation when healthy. We'll see what he comes back like. Joe Burrow, who was a number 1 overall pick, and look at the way that Cincinnati changed basically overnight by getting a player like him. So you see both sides of the coin. Which one is more likely? Probably picking high. But at the same time, as long as you feel like you have the ammunition and you trust the organization, and that's another thing that I wanted to bring up, and let me just transition right into that, is for Tomlin's pretty much entire tenure up until the last few seasons, he had one guy at the quarterback position. That was who the success has been with. People are talking about haven't won a playoff game since this certain point. It's been 0 times since Ben Roethlisberger went out the door. Now, Ben Roethlisberger very much at fault too, if you look at his numbers within those playoff losses recently with the way that he has played. That's another conversation. But do you think that we can, like, is quarterback maybe the one spot that gives you a little bit of pause with Tomlin? Do we know for sure that he can identify talent at the quarterback position to be able to bring it in? Does it matter if he can? Like, I don't know.
I mean, I think it matters. It definitely matters, because
the reason that I said doesn't matter is because of having Omar Khan and Andy Weidel.
Well, yeah, that's fair. But at the same time, like, I'll say this, like, does it matter? Not really, because if it was up to Bill Cowher, Ben Roethlisberger wouldn't have been a Steeler. They would have picked an offensive lineman. So I guess in a sense, it doesn't really matter if your head coach needs to identify talent at the quarterback position. And plus, not that I wouldn't expect him to, because he's a defensive-minded coach, but it's a little bit different whenever you are a defensive-minded coach. You're not one of these offensive gurus in the NFL. Like, I don't expect you to take a quarterback and excel him to the level some of these other guys are. I don't expect that from Tomlin. I expect that from maybe some of his other coaches, and I expect Omar Khan and Andy Weidel to identify that type of talent. But Tomlin as a head coach, I don't expect to take a quarterback and make him one of the best in the NFL. That would be the surrounding talent around Tomlin.
What's funny to me, and you kind of got me thinking about this point too, and Al and I have talked about this. It's funny that everybody like has these debates about how much say Tomlin has in terms of roster construction, but very clearly it's no more or less than it was under Kevin Colbert, because you see that like nothing has changed about him, right? Like he's still the head coach. So that part of it hasn't changed. But look how drastically different things are in terms of the way that they've drafted before Omar Khan and since Omar Khan, how different it is. Yet Mike Tomlin is still there. So his role has been clearly the same. What's changed is above him, with Kevin Colbert becoming Omar Khan and Andy Weidel.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we've had some, at least we had a very good draft last season. We think we have a very good draft this season. Some good picks in there. Mm-hmm. And I do think that is going to drastically improve the team. And I also think it's going to drastically improve what fans will think of Tomlin, whether he needs credit for it or not, because I think he's going to have better players at his disposal to improve his team. And so while it may not have been him selecting those players, he's going to have the benefit of getting those players in his arsenal to be able to coach them up and put them in a position to win more football games. So whether he deserves credit for something like that or not, I do feel like he's going to get the credit if he wins with those types of players. I don't know.
Let me ask you a question. Where would you rank Tomlin among NFL head coaches?
See, I feel like the answer is different if you would have asked.
And also
this.
the people in the comments. People watching or listening to this, I want your answer as well.
Yeah, let us know below. But this answer would have been different if you would have asked me like 5 years ago, because now I think he's a bit lower than what I did have him. Because if we're talking like 2015 to 2018, I would have said Mike Tomlin's like a top 3 head coach in the NFL. And if you're talking like 2018 to 2020, still would have said probably around like top 5. And I don't know if it's necessarily by merit or if it's just by the argument, because you hear this so much whenever you talk about getting rid of Tomlin. Well, if you get rid of Tomlin, who's going to replace him?
Yeah,
and maybe that played into the mentality of like, well, that's true. Who are you going to replace him with? Like, how many of the head coaches will I take above him? So I would say at this point, Mike Tomlin is still a top 10 head coach in the football league, in the National Football League, even if his team doesn't always play like a top 10 team. I think as just a coach by himself, I'd still put him as a top 10 guy. I don't know if he's top 5, but I think he's definitely still within that top 10. You look at the success that he's had with the teams, the low floor has to speak volumes, I feel like, from a security standpoint. And I think that teams value that sort of thing with the head coach, that you're not going to get low lows with Mike Tomlin. And then you just look at the way that players that have played for him or played against him and the way that they respect him as a coach. I feel like that can't be overstated enough as well, because that's something that as fans, we can have our opinions of Mike Tomlin, but those guys are in the room. Those guys are on the field with him. They are right next to him all the time. They interact with him. I feel like the fact that he has so much respect league-wide from players, whether they play for him or against him, also speaks volume to him. So where I'd rank him, top 10, maybe he's probably within that 7 to 10 threshold for me. As of right now, it's tough to say off the top of my head, but that's probably the range. If I had to really get nitty gritty about it, I'd have to look at a list of head coaches.
I would have him at 4 or 5. The only ones that I would definitively say that I would have higher are Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Andy Reid. I think if they do it again next season, D'Amico Ryans could push to be ahead of him. I think you can make the argument for like a Kevin Stefanski. I think you can make the argument for like a Mike McDaniel, Dan Campbell. These guys are all in that mix for sure. But the top 3 to me are the only ones that like I feel good about saying for sure are. And here's what I wanted to ask you, why I asked you that. How many of those head coaches do you put on the Pittsburgh Steelers and they're a contender in 2024?
That's a good point.
But how many of those teams do you pluck their quarterback from and they're a contender in 20? Give me Andy Reid on the Steelers. I'm not viewing them any differently. Give me Patrick Mahomes on the Steelers. I'm picking them to win the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. That's very true. And that kind of goes back to the Patriots, like, was it Brady or was it Belichick debate? Because for the longest time, I would have said it's Belichick. But at the same time, you look at what the Patriots were whenever Brady left, not the same Belichick. So I do think that there's a debate there. I'm curious, where would you rank divisional opponent John Harbaugh versus Tomlin? Like,
Right. I mean,
they were like right neck and neck.
Yeah. I mean, I would say he's probably 6 or 7 for me. I think Zach Taylor is far and away the worst out of the division.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that.
And he's the one that's been in the Super Bowl the most recent.
Yeah.
Just going to show you how much quarterback play can elevate the head coach.
I mean, I think you could probably make an argument that the NFC North, or the AFC North, excuse me, has 3 of the top 10 coaches in the league.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I honestly, the NFC North, pretty good coaches besides maybe Matt Eberflus. We'll see what he looks like with a quarterback and an offense now. But those coaches to me are very good as well. Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, and why is the Packers head coach Matt LaFleur? I think they're all kind of within the same realm as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like to me, Kyle Shanahan is the needle mover. Sean McVay also, but like Kyle Shanahan more than anybody else right now in the league is the needle mover, because I think unanimously we can say Brock Purdy is obviously a better player than people thought he was going to be. He's a top 10 player at the position. He's a good player. He's not a great quarterback. No one's going to talk me into thinking that he's like a top 3, top 5 guy at the position. And look at what San Fran is doing with him playing the most important position of football. Kyle Shanahan to me is the needle mover at the position, or the head coaching spot.
I agree with that. But if I'm making my own personal rankings, I'm still probably putting Andy Reid at number 1. And I know he has the best quarterback in the league, but I look at the success, the prolonged success that Andy Reid has had in the league with the Chiefs and going back to the Eagles. He's done it with several quarterbacks. I would probably rank him just like overall number 1. But I agree with you that as far as like the needle mover at the position, Kyle Shanahan is that guy.
I just think, and don't like Andy Reid, I have him as 2. But like to me, how different was his tenure up until getting Mahomes from what Tomlin's tenure is?
I mean, not that different. Maybe some more regular season wins, but as far as playoff performances goes, not that different.
And to me, it's also because I think there's a little bit of bias there, not in the sense of like the fandom, but the more exciting side of the football. He brings the offensive perspective as opposed to Tomlin bringing the defense.
Yeah, that's also true.
Not for you. I'm just saying like how people view.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Also, I will say this. As you were talking about Brock Purdy, I thought of this. Brock Purdy in Kyle Shanahan's offense is what, at the absolute best, Steeler fans would probably hope Kenny Pickett would have been in a Steelers uniform.
I remember having those conversations last year. Dude, before the season last year, like literally before week 1, because that's who we played week 1, Alan and I were debating Kenny Pickett versus Brock Purdy. Look how much has changed in a year. Like which one we would rather have. Like everything else aside, you're just dropping either one into the same system. Which one would you rather have? My God, how things change within a year. I don't think I've played a single ad yet, so I don't even know how to transition this. We have a sponsor. Their name's Game Changers. Here's their ad. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Over 3,000 vintage t-shirts now, by the way. Gamechanger.la. I just got a new one today. Very generous. They gave me a code for a free shirt for my birthday. Got a new Ken Griffey Jr. t-shirt on the way. So shout out to our folks at Game Changers. They were already my favorite t-shirt company in the business before we partnered up. Even more so now.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about Tomlin, his extension, I want to get your idea. Maybe this is a dumb question, but I want to get your thoughts on how do you think that this could affect a quarterback extension next offseason, knowing that Mike Tomlin is going to be extended for the next few seasons, whether that is Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, depending on who it is, or if it's either of them. But how do we think that knowing that Tomlin is still going to be that head coach, how that could affect a decision from either one of those guys, depending on who it may be and who the Steelers prefer out of those two moving forward?
That's good. I like that because I had you're going to say subtle flex. I had a conversation with a current member of the Steelers about Tomlin's extension and how the media is kind of spun it in the negative direction, and they're not fans, don't understand why he's getting an extension. And we were talking about just how different the off seasons have felt like the last couple of years, like actually leveraging Tomlin's ability to get players here that want to play for him because they are more active in free agency. Like, even though players said in the past they wanted to play for Tomlin, didn't really matter because like the Kevin Colbert era Steelers weren't really pursuing outside free agents to the degree that we've seen over the last 2 seasons. Now that that's become a thing in players that want to play for Tomlin, it's actually on the table for them to come and play for Tomlin. You've seen them make bigger splashes. Patrick Queen here now. You talked about the quarterbacks that are here now, guys that wanted to play specifically for this team because of Mike Tomlin. So that's great. I really do think that maybe that opens up. We talked about, like, is it possible that both these guys are just here for this year and that's it? Like, if things don't go well, sure. I also think it's entirely possible that one of these guys is, the 2025 starter. Man, the Justin Fields thing just really intrigues me. We know Tomlin really liked him at Ohio State Pro Day, but knew that, like, they were never going to have a shot at him. It was kind of the same thing like the conversation he had with Chase Young all those years ago. We're never going to be drafting high enough to get a guy like you. So I think that there could be something there. Really good point to bring up. And whether it's with those two guys or just like a bigger picture than those two even, is there somebody else out there? I mean, let's throw out a wild scenario, right? Dak Prescott going to hit free agency. I'm saying it's a wild scenario.
I'm not laughing at you bringing it up. I'm just laughing. Could you imagine in back-to-back off seasons, you acquire Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and then the next off season you acquire Dak Prescott? Like, imagine Steeler fans 15 years from now talking about, like, dude, do you guys remember like 2024, 2025? That time was nuts. Or 23 to 25. That time was nuts.
Hey. Keep throwing darts until one hits a bullseye.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. But to go back to my question, I think that if I am Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, or just the quarterback position in general, I feel like there's a lot of comfortability. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what I'm going to use.
Sounds right.
There's a lot of comfort. That's probably the right word to say. In knowing that your head coach is going to be around. Because I'm sure that guys who have coaches that are on the hot seat, and I'm sure that there's several in these positions, when you know a coach is on the hot seat or could potentially leaving, and not that Tomlin was ever realistically on the hot seat, but like, what if he just played out the season and then he was gone? As a player, not knowing that and uncertain of the future, it does make you uneasy as far as staying with an organization goes. Especially at the quarterback position. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. You got to be comfortable in the situation that you're in. And so the fact that Tomlin is going to be around, whether that is Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, like maybe in a scenario, I'll give it for either guy. Maybe if Justin Fields doesn't really see the field that much, but because of the relationship that he could grow with Mike Tomlin this season within the organization, and if their succession plan is like, hey, it's Russ this year, Russ is then going to cash out in free agency the upcoming offseason, but we want to mold you into our Jordan Love. We want you to be the guy. Maybe having Mike Tomlin still be around, knowing that for Justin, that could be the reason that he decides to stay. And knowing that Mike Tomlin did have that interest in him, that could be the turning point for him to want to stay in Pittsburgh and take that chance to be that starting quarterback in that situation. And on the flip side of that, if Russell Wilson, if the Steelers want to go with him next offseason, if he has a great year as a 35-year-old, and maybe he does take a bit of a pay cut to stay in Pittsburgh because Mike Tomlin's going to be there and he likes playing for Mike Tomlin. We expect that he could probably go out and ask for another $30 million contract a year. But if he's willing to take some money off because he wants to play in that situation, in this locker room for that head coach, I think that there's something to be said that Mike Tomlin probably plays a bigger role. And you were just talking about it too, for players wanting to either come here or players wanting to stay here. I don't think that we should probably overlook this situation enough, because I think that it could have an impact on either quarterback and other positions around the team.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. Just some other housekeeping things that we said this is probably to be a shorter episode. I will play, you know what, we're going to do it like this. Again, this has been very bad with the way that we've done the ads, just because we went like 20 some minutes without playing one. I try to play one typically 10 minutes or so in, then a second one to kind of break it up about the half hour or so mark, and then a third one right before the end. But that's not going to happen. So guys, here's our friend Christian Circle at Teach Barbershop. Smitty from around the 412 here, and while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keith at Keith's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keith's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app The Cut, book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keith's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. So the last few things that I wanted to talk about was kind of Terrell Austin, TA, defensive coordinator, doing some housekeeping stuff, over the last 48 hours at Steelers minicamp as we head to training camp. Talked about Peyton Wilson potentially being the dime linebacker. Threw out that he could win that role right off the bat, which would be great to see. Now, they don't play a ton of dime. I mean, last year, Joey Porter Jr. started out as their dime cornerback. That's the role that they eased him into. He's playing like 7 snaps a game. So, maybe Peyton Wilson, this is a good way to get his feet wet right from the jump. Would be awesome to see him take on some role on the defense, along with the special teams value that he's going to provide right from day one. Also talked about getting Minka back to playing Minka ball. That's why I said that's been kind of just, or Minka stuff, Minka ball. Like, they're throwing these terms around this year. Like, very clear that they realize he hasn't been able to be the player because of the personnel, because of injuries. There's so many different things. But now, bringing in Deshaun Elliott, still having DeMonte KZ, bringing in Patrick Queen at the second level, Peyton Wilson, the guy that can, be the dime linebacker, getting Cam Sutton back in the fold. Dante Jackson should be improved from what Levi Wallace and Patrick Peterson gave them last year. So, the upgraded personnel on the defense should allow Minka Fitzpatrick to get back to, doing some zone coverage things as opposed to having a man guys up, being able to be a robber, being able to play deep safety, half field, too high. Like, he can do a lot of different things. So hopefully that is the case. Obviously, everybody's gonna have to stay healthy. But I mentioned the 3 safety thing. They haven't been able to do that. Like, they started out the season with the idea of doing that now for 2 straight seasons. And then because of injuries, just haven't been able to do it. 2 years ago, DeMonte KZ breaks his arm in the preseason. So you don't get to have the Minka, Terrell Edmonds, KZ packages until like week 10. Last year, Keanu Neal gets hurt. KZ missed a game or 2 because of the suspension and an injury, and then Minka gets hurt. So it's just like all these kind of things keep happening where they're not being able to get into like this big nickel 3 safety package. Hopefully this is the year that they're able to do it, because I know they really want to.
Yeah, I would like to see that. I would like to see the experimenting of like changing what has been the status quo the last couple of seasons on the defensive side of the ball. Getting Minka back to being that roaming free safety, basically. I'm not going to say he's positionless back there. Like, he's definitely free safety, but I feel like when he has the ability to kind of go where he wants to within the scheme of the defense, that's when you're going to get the best out of Minka. That's where he shuts down half of the field. You don't see the targets. I mean, I remember when we were talking about in like prime Minka so far with the Steelers career, when we were talking about how the drop off as far as statistic goes from him getting interceptions and making those splash plays to what the next year people complaining that they're not seeing that. It's like, people, you have to look at past that and realize that he's not being thrown to. He's eliminating half of the football field because of the play that he can bring. If they're able to get back to that, I think that would do wonders for the back half of the defense. And Peyton Wilson being the dime backer, I don't think that that's actually that surprising, just based off of the skill set that he brings, the sideline to sideline speed that he can bring. I mean, in coverage,
6'4", runs a 4.3.
In coverage, he's easily their fastest linebacker that they have. So if that's going to be the case and he wins that spot outright, just from a trait standpoint, I don't think that's the least bit surprising at all. And I hope he does, because I'd love to see him play. He's a very athletic kid. It's going to be tough for him to play in other situations because of the depth that we now have at the linebacker position that we feel a lot better at. But if he's able to contribute in those like dime situations, I think that would be awesome to see. And I still love the fact that his locker is next to a Landon Roberts, because another shout out to that episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. That was probably my favorite episode that you guys have ever done. And he's one of, if not my favorite Steelers defender on the defensive side of the ball now because of that interview. I think that he is awesome. I would love to have him on here to talk to him. Just the way that he was able to talk about playing the linebacker's position, playing and how he prepares for teams, how he thinks on the field. Like, all of that was good stuff. So if you haven't, go check that episode out of Steelers Afternoon Drive with the Landon Roberts, with Smitty and Allen talking to him. It was an absolutely phenomenal episode. Great insight from a great player. And but he mentioned in that episode that Peyton Wilson was next to him. So having that mentor next to him makes me even more excited for the mentorship that Peyton Wilson is getting and how that could develop him even better as a linebacker.
It's funny because we talked about how good of an athlete Patrick Queen is, and he absolutely is, but he ran a 4.5 40. Yeah, Peyton Wilson went a 4.39. So, like, from just a speed perspective, yeah, Peyton Wilson definitely has him beat. But like Queen's coverage instincts, I'll be curious to see how quickly Peyton Wilson can get up to that level. That's why it's interesting to me, because I think, you know, Patrick Queen can also do the job as the dime linebacker. So it's interesting, like, how the trust that they're putting in Peyton Wilson, if they already are planning him to be in this role. But I'm all for it. You know, if he can go out there, get his feet wet on defense in that role while also contributing on special teams, and then obviously taking on more as a role down the line. You mentioned Landon Roberts, love him, would love to see him finish out his career in Pittsburgh, but as of right now, only in their contract for the 2024 season. Cole Holcomb, who knows? By the way, Tomlin did finally give an update on him. Expects him back to training camp, so that's great. Yeah,
that's good.
Holcomb was also going to be back into the fold for training camp, like being 4 or 5 deep there. Don't forget about Mark Robinson, certainly a guy that can contribute on special teams at the very least, but also, like, I know that it's at this point, it's just like beating a dead horse how much we mention it. This dude played 1 year of linebacker before being drafted, like, still very new to the position. So they knew this was going to take time. Thought there were some encouraging moments on tape at the end of last year, and he's looked pretty solid from, by all accounts, this year, early on in here through OTAs and minicamp. So we'll see what training camp going to be very important for a guy like Mark Robinson as well, and certainly the preseason too. But yeah, I think that's all I got. Man, you got me fired up about the Landon Roberts thing. Yeah, we got 6 weeks now between this and training camp. So maybe we can make something happen. I know he's got 3 kids, one of them pretty fresh. So don't know what his free time looks like, but if we can make something happen, we'll absolutely do it. So I'll see what's up with him and see if we can get him on here.
I just wanted to look back to see how many linebackers they did carry on the inside last season, because I know when we looked at the linebacker depth, it was astonishingly thin at outside and inside. And I'm looking at the initial 53-man roster last year, and it looks like the only outside linebackers or inside linebackers that they had were Quan Alexander, Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, and Mark Robinson. So if they repeat that and they're only going to carry 4, this is a very important training camp for Mark Robinson, because you do have Patrick Queen in the fold now, along with Landon Roberts, Cole Holcomb, who's coming back from a big injury, happened actually at the game that we were at together last season against Tennessee. See how quickly he can get up to game speed and just really football speed in general again, because he's been off for such a long time. And then you have Peyton Wilson, who's just recently drafted, and they're already talking about could be a key position on the defense. It's going to be tough for Mark Robinson to be able to even get a spot on the 53-man roster potentially if they're going to repeat what they did last season, because at linebacker, inside and outside, they only carried 4 of each.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so maybe he's fighting an uphill battle. I just feel like the special teams value, especially with the new kickoff, like I just feel like there's so much added value for him there than there was even last year to carry a 5th linebacker because of the kickoff and kick return roles.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the separator.
Maybe you take away from one of the defensive backs, because last year they carried.
That's where I'm thinking.
I think 10 defensive backs last year.
Yeah, I think a guy like Trenton Thompson or Ryan Watts is probably, on that bubble. We'll see, because they might only keep 3 safeties if they're keeping the extra linebacker, and then the corners, obviously. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see some really good battles at training camp. We'll find ways to continue to put out content, even through that. Again, 6 weeks without any Steelers practices from now until July 24th, when they resume at training camp in Latrobe. Maybe we'll see some of you guys there. I know we have plans tentatively to do a live episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. Alan and I, along with a bunch of other people that cover the team. Maybe we'll have a player or two stop by from training camp during our 1-year anniversary episode on July 27th. So be on the lookout for updates about that. That is breaking news, by the way, right on here. So we'll see if we can make that come to fruition. But anybody that is a crossover, watches and or listens to Around the 412 and Steelers Afternoon Drive, you just have some exclusive information on the episode. So anything else regarding the Steelers?
Not the Steelers, but the shows. You should listen to both. I mean, they're both great shows. Both different, too.
Man, this is one of those weeks. So I put out, while the Penguins, when we weren't doing the Penguins show, it was actually at 7 episodes. But now that we're doing the Penguins show again, back to your boy doing 8 podcasts a week. So yeah, I appreciate everybody that listens or watches any of those.
Yeah, that's crazy. The fact that, and 6 out of those 8 are Steelers ones. The fact that you're not just like sick of talking about the Steelers just shows the passion, the true passion of a season ticket holder who's friends with personal friends with people on the team. Subtle flex.
Not to be named, just people on the team.
Yeah, just
that are hopefully
players on the team
that are hopefully getting a new contract at some point soon,
and will hopefully appear on the Steelers Afternoon Drive live show at training camp. I'm assuming, but I don't know.
Fingers crossed. We'll see. Anyways, Everything Custom Designs, the loader that is above Tyler right now. We will play their ad here in a second, but I do want to tell you the link in the description to Haley Wagner, Everything Custom Designs, her Etsy, will have a few new designs from our merch very soon, hopefully this weekend on the site. 3 new actually designs. Really big fan of the circular one. Not to single out any of them, but we revamped one of our old designs. It looks fresh, maybe even better than the original one. So very excited about that. So go pick up some merch. Maybe not the best time to plug hoodies and long sleeve tees, but there's also t-shirts on there as well. So go grab something. We appreciate you. If you buy something of ours, please be sure to tag us as well. And we'll put that out there. And what will we do for you? Nothing. Just repost and like the post. So thanks for doing that. But anyways, Haley Wagner, Everything Custom Designs. Smitty, take it away. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything Custom Designs. Our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She can do all that for you. She even does Around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, Everything Custom Designs. Haley Wagner. She does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. There we go. Everything Custom Designs. Link in the description for that, as well as the link for GameChanger.la or Pick6.la, where you can save $10 on your order using code AT412. 3,000 different heavyweight shirts designs on there. Very excited about everything that we got going on. Very excited about the future of the show. Again, this summer, we started, the idea of the podcast came about in July. We didn't record the podcast until August 28th. So this summer, when we hit that date, we'll mark 7 years of doing the podcast. So hopefully a lot of really cool stuff coming. We've done a lot of cool stuff in the past, but hopefully even more stuff on the way. Tyler, anything else?
No. Let's get out of here. It's hot in my apartment.
It's hot in his apartment. I'm going to go have some cake to celebrate my birthday. Appreciate you
recording
all.
on Smitty's birthday. So everybody tell him happy birthday in the comments. Okay.
Appreciate you all.
He's a man of the people. Recording 4 podcasts on his birthday.
Yeah. Yep. I wouldn't want to do anything else. I'm lying a little bit, but like because I'm being so generous with my time on my birthday, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about, questions for a future episode. If you're listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave us a 5-star review over there, subscribe over there, search Around the 412. We will come right up. For Tyler Weeks, for myself, thanks for listening to the Around the 412 Steelers show. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.